God. Now, it's a beautiful theme, and it ties in with what's happening in the Eucharistic revival as well, that's happening in our diocese this year. So what does it mean to know, to love, and to serve God? And why did we choose that as a theme? Well, let me take you back a little bit. Some of you may remember the old Baltimore Catechism, those of you who might be in my age group. And in the Baltimore Catechism, the question was, why did God make us? And the answer was, God made us to know him, to love him, and to serve him in this world, and to be happy with him in heaven. So that's the beauty of what we look at in our faith, okay? You know, when we come to know God, not just know of him, but when we come to know God, to really know him, we come to love him. And when we love him, our response needs to be service. When we feel God's love for us, and when we too love God, our response is service, to go out and serve others, to help others, to bring others closer to him, and to bring a joy to their lives as well. Let me get just a little bit deeper. How do we come to know God? And there's many ways. We all come to know God differently, I think. We all have our own story. Some of us come to our faith very quickly. It might just be we were raised in our faith and we come to our faith very quickly. Others go through periods of testing of their faith. Others come to know God through something that might have happened in their lives that kind of jolted them. For others, that might have been words that someone said to them, something religious that someone gave to them, something that helped them discern. We all have our own faith story. And I ask the question, how do you come to know anyone? If there's a person you really want to know, whether it's a spouse, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and you want to come to know that person, what do? You talk with that person. You listen to that person. You ask questions. You seek. You want to spend as much time as possible with that person. That's the same way it is in coming to know God. We need to spend as much time as possible. We need to be able to speak to God in prayer. We need to be able to learn about our Lord through reading, through watching Catholic videos. Our parish, if you subscribe to our newsletter, we have access to all of Bishop Barron's videos, and it shares our faith so beautifully. We come to know God by spending time with him at Mass, spending time in adoration, just learning as much as we possibly can, sitting at his feet, so to speak, to listen to him so we can learn. And he wants to learn about us. He knows us, but he wants to know what's in our heart as well. So that's the essence of coming to know our Lord, to read, to pray, to study, to seek, to act, to respond. And with that, we will feel God's love. I say to people all the time that a faith journey is like climbing a spiral staircase. So for any of you who have ever been on a spiral staircase, you know that you start to ascend, you start to go up the staircase, and you're going around in circles. You're seeing the same landscape over and over again. But each time you see it from a slightly different perspective. You're a little higher, your angle's a little bit different, and as a result, you start to see things that you may not have seen before. And as you continue to ascend that staircase, you continue to see things from a different perspective. If you stop, your perspective doesn't change. So it is with our faith. Think of it as climbing a spiral staircase. You need to continue to move upward. You need to continue to be able to see from a different angle, to hear God's word from a different perspective. Maybe something is happening in your life is helping you to see it from a different perspective. But always to be ascending more and more and more, learning more and more and more, so that your faith grows and deepens. So what we're going to do in the course of this video series throughout Lent is we're going to speak about knowing God, loving God, and serving God. And we're also going to speak to some parishioners, faces that you're going to recognize, names that you're going to recognize. And we're speaking with them about how did they come to know God? How did they come to love God? How do they feel God's love for them? And how have they taken it to the next step to serve others? So that's what we'll be doing in this series. Now, we can probably interview hundreds of you because in our parish, we have so many people who are just so active in their faith, some visible to us, but many other that aren't visible. They're helping the community. They're doing so many other things that we may not even know about. So let me introduce you to a person who I'm going to be speaking to today. You'll recognize his face, you'll recognize his name, you'll know John Audio, and you'll know his family, who are really regular parishioners here at St. Peter and Paul Parish. But we'll get a chance to speak to John a little about his faith and his faith journey as well. So take a listen to the interview that we just did with John. My guest today is a good friend and a parishioner at St. Peter and Paul, John Audio. Welcome, John. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, thank you. So John, during this Lenten season, we're focusing on knowing God, loving God, and serving God. Now, the reason we've chosen that as kind of our theme is because we recognize that once we come to know God, really know God, okay, not just know of God, but once we really come to know God, we begin to feel God's love, and we're able to share that love with others, and then we're able to serve, to be able to move out in service to others. So within this video series, we're kind of sharing some thoughts about how people came to know, came to love, and came to serve God, and that's why I've asked you for this interview, John. So thank you very much for helping us with this. So, John, let me ask you the first question. How did you come to know God?
My foundation, I was pretty much has always been from my family, my mother especially. She actually was integral in getting us all to church when we were younger. That's one thing. No matter what, there was 8 of us. But she was no matter what it was, we were getting to church, and she'd pack us all up in whatever little car it was, and we would get to church. And it was actually St. Charles Borromeo was the first church there, and that's where I was baptized in. But that was big on that. My dad was always working. Now he was religious. I mean, he was he was Catholic and whatnot, but he had to work. I mean, he would work. And my mother was her kids are going to go to church, and that's what it was. And sometimes we'd get there late, but we'd be strolling in with 8 people and getting into the cry room if there were little people, the whole nine. But that's what it was. That was the focus of it, and it kind of grew from there because there always was something about it that was important. It made that important in our lives to that. Now, if we stuck with it, some of us stuck with it, some of us moved on, whatever it was. But I mean, you come and you go. It happens. It's like ebb and flow. But for the most part, that was the focal part, and that was the awareness. But it kind of grew with me with that. And I married a Catholic woman, so she's Catholic and whatnot. I went to Catholic. She went to Catholic high school, the whole thing too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing I know about you is that your faith has progressed. Okay, because I know that you're part of a gospel reflection group. I know that you read the Bible. I know that you study the Bible. I know that your faith has progressed. What brought you on that path, kind of, to progress in your faith?
I'll be honest with you. I really don't. I don't want to say I don't know, but I do know. I mean, something just told me. I mean, I always was interested in. I'm a history person, so I always was interested in how things happen and what it was, what it is now. Understanding what the faith was, but at the same time, when you start studying about it, reading about it, delving deeper into what was written about it, reading something and taking the inspiration from it. But I don't know if it was something that just sparked or if it was something that just said, hey, and I found it interesting, and I would find things inspiring. I would watch those. I would sometimes, as I was younger and a little bit younger, I would watch movies you would watch the movies of like Jesus of Nazareth was a big one, or Great Story Retold, or whatever it was, and there were different certain scenes that just kind of just tugged at you, and that's what it was designed for. But they tugged at you more, and you're kind of sitting there thinking, "Wow, that kind of was something that was just there was something just there," and it just kind of pulled it out of me to that point to where I wanted to look it up and figure it out and dig on it. And what did this mean? When he said this, what did it mean? When he did this, what did it mean? How is it important for the first miracle? Why was that so important? What was the focus of that? Why did that start the whole thing going on there? That's I guess that's what it is. I can guess that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Um, that knowledge, okay, that knowing God, um, again leads us to the next question, which is really, was there a point that you began to feel God's love and really understand God's love? And how do you see sharing God's love with others?
The part of that was especially when you look at what you've been given. That's when you start feeling God's love and the different things you've been given. If you're given family, you start seeing it. You start seeing it in other people. You start seeing God's love in other people. I see God's love. We've gone one of the most uh, moments that I can tell you when I really and is when I went to Niagara Falls. Believe it or not, that was one of the things. And to see that, and to have the falls be standing there and they're falling down on you and just underneath it, and you're just saying, "I'm this big in the whole world," and that is just huge. And he had time to make me too, and at the same time made that. And we've been to the Grand Canyon. I've been to the place in Oregon and place in Montana, and seeing that wondrous kind of things on. You're saying to yourself, "I'm so small," but at the same time, you made this too. And at the same time, it was cathartic. It was a cathartic moment where you're like, "Wow." And I think that's probably when you totally felt as though this is what it is. And then the other two times was when my kids were born. That was a big thing because that was finally made that step in there. My father was with me was that my family was away, but my father was there for the first one. And that was the first time that I actually had a father son moment with him, uh, to when my first son was born. And it was kind of an arduous, it was a long, stretched out 3 days, and then he finally was. And then when my other second son was born, there was some stuff kind of going on with that. But when I got there, my mother and my brother were both there when he was being cleaned up, and it just boom, everything just kind of up and just whatever, and I blubbered like an idiot. It was just one of those things. But that right there showed that there was something more to tell you. You know what? It's when you see miracles, you appreciate them for what they are, and you don't take them for granted, and you see that that was a gift. And that, I think, is what tells you in your heart, this is what it is. He's giving you these things, and maybe should start appreciating it. Maybe you should start saying, "Wow, I'm just a piece, and these other gifts have been given me." And something, like I said, we take them for granted, but if you start accepting them for what they are, that they really are gifts, that you start feeling it. I guess that's it. I
Which
guess.
really moves us to the next part of it. You come to know God, and we all come to know God differently. Your story has similarities to others, but is unique to you. Um, the way that you have come to feel God's love, again, has similarities to others, but is unique to you because we all come to know God and love God in different ways. What it then does, I think, is then move us out to an understanding that we are made to serve God. So tell me about some ways that you find yourself serving God, and maybe some ways that you feel you're being moved to serve God differently in the future.
Well, I proclaim the word at church. I'm a reader, and I really like doing that. I just love spreading it out. And one of the things I say before I do it, I always kind of say a quick prayer before you either leave the house or before when I'm waiting to walk up and all that, or to the altar. And I always say, just let me touch one person with this, or open someone's ears to hear this, and hopefully they get an understanding, or at least that I say it to them that they actually take something from it, or or they have an understanding how it ties together with the next part of it. And so that's one of those. But I'd also you spread the word to someone, and that's that. And at the same, that's in church, but outside of church, it's kind of like you want to say, I actually make sure that I try as best I can. It's not always successful, but I do try to making sure good move, open the door for people, opening the car door for someone, letting someone ahead of me start spreading the to that. But I also decided I got to take it to the next step. And so I decided, so I started giving communion out. Now I've been thinking about other things. Um, I have a discernment going on in my mind if I'm going to follow through to the diaconate and whatnot. I'm still considering that, trying to work out the secular ideas. The spiritual part, I think, is there. It's the other parts of the financial piece and whatnot, and see if I can get my life and make that true commitment. I want to make it right. I don't want to make I don't want to just take it halfway and then kind of say, well, I can't do it because X, Y, Z. I want to be able to do it. But what I do is I decided, well, let me sign up to be an EM. And you do that. I've only done it a couple times, and I've actually taken it to other people, and I'm slated to take it to the senior centers and whatnot. That's going to be, I sign up for that. But that right there is, if you think about it, you are taking Jesus to someone else who can't get there, and I think that's what he wanted. If he needs a vehicle, and we're vehicles. We carry the message. We carry him. We carry whatever it is, if it's in our hearts, or if it's physically, or if it's through writing, or through reading, or through our words. I mean, we're the vehicle that transports his message, and that's what he called his specific apostles to do specific things. They had specific talents to what it was, and some of them could do this, we're good for that, good for that. St. Peter was what he was. He was the epitome of just being a human being and battling with it, to the finally became one of the greatest saints that there was, because he's got the keys. But then you have smaller one, the lesser, not smaller in stature, but just more subtle. Your Matthew was more subtle. But his word had to come out. Paul's word had to come out, because he was touched that way. So you got to carry the message, and how you deliver it, there's different ways you can deliver it. And like I said, we're the vehicles of that. I think he uses us as that. And even though he uses us without saying, I'm going to use you for this, sometimes it just happens. And next thing you know, you're carrying it, and you're like, oh. And then you turn around and say, wait a minute, wow, okay. You have that moment like, wow, wait a minute, I'm doing this, but I'm doing it because, and I don't know why I want to do it, but I wanted to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. Okay. And because it hits you.
John, honestly, I appreciate so much what you shared with me and with all of those who will be viewing this. Um, Again, this theme of knowing, loving, and serving really brings us through this understanding that we need to truly get to know God, not just know of him, but get to know him, and to do all of those things that we would want to do when we want to get to know someone better, just as you are doing.
I hope you found that enjoyable. I know I did. Listening to John share some information about his own faith, and how he has come to know God, to love God, and how he feels that coming out in service to others. Again, we'll be doing this with other parishioners over the coming weeks. I hope that your Lenten journey will be rich, rewarding, be one that brings you closer to Christ, one that helps you change, be a different person, so that when you come out on the other side of this Lenten journey, you really are closer to becoming the person that God created you to be. Thank you for watching. God bless you.